Hi, did you miss me? That was like 3 seconds. Actually, it was less than 3 seconds. I didn't even want you to miss the abrading part. One thing you really gotta, have a problem with when you're trying to do indirect like this with something this small is holding it rigid enough to where it doesn't move. It's a problem. Very difficult to do. You gotta kind of take a little bit more care to try and hope that you're doing what you know you gotta do. I would like to see Jason try and do his spider hole on this one. Jason, if you're out there, spider hole man. I don't know about that. I mean, I know the guy's got mad skills with his ability to see angles and stuff, and he probably makes every one of them flakes file a flight plan as they're coming off. He knows exactly where they're going to go, but still. I think I said this on one of my other videos, but when I was first starting out, I was always cutting that finger because I wasn't controlling the flakes underneath when they'd come off, and it seemed like they'd go sideways and go over there and get that finger. Some people call that their ring finger. I call that my scar finger. Which, if you think about it, is a great name for a movie. Low budget movie, but still. Hey man, you see that movie Scar Finger? Oh man, I can't stand bloody digits. Well, in case you're wondering, yes, I do know that it would have made more sense and been simpler to make this from a flake. But you're missing the point. You don't understand experimental archaeology. They didn't have big old nice flakes around here. When they need a little arrowhead, usually they were just, kill them a gator gar and take the scale and use that. By the way, don't listen to anything I say with regard to how people used to do anything, because I have no idea. And you know how when you read those scientific articles, if you have access to them, because they're like $30 or $50 or whatever for each article to read it for 10 minutes. If you read all that stuff, I don't. And so, because what I have found works better for me is making things up. There was a little side English on that. I don't know if you saw it, but that's where we're at. And you've been along for the ride so far, so. I would like everybody to understand that I, of all people, know very good and well that there's way more than one way to skin a cat when flint knapping. Sorry, Moots. And so I'm not a technique snob because I recognize that, when you go to nap ins, you see guys that are good with what they're doing. And they may be doing something you ain't never seen anybody do before, but they've done it a lot and they're good at it. And like for instance, you've never seen me abrade with the side of a solid iron or solid copper rod, but I've seen a number of guys abrading with the sides of their rods when they use solid copper, which is not a great example of a napping technique per se, but you know what I mean. Hi. You're on video.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. That's Mrs. Freeze-Crat, y'all. She's getting some. What are you getting out?
Lasagna.
Lasagna? Okay. No, that sounds fine, dear. Love you. I know how to act. Kind of. My son, I've tried to teach my son how to act, but he just, I don't know, he says things sometimes. You don't understand that discretion is the better part of nutrition. If it gets put in front of me, that's what I eat. I don't want to cook it. I ain't crazy. Well, I don't want to cook. I fluted it. Look, see that flute? Yeah. I forgot to say that. I should have said it sooner, but. Okay, so we're just getting a little old. I still got a square edge here and all this junk here. I got issues. What to do, what to do. This thing is too hard for me to go probably to doing a bunch of pressure work on it. Although I could try that, but then I'd mess up my beautiful percussion flake pattern. This is joking, people. You need to laugh. Alright, I'm going to try and do some pressure here and try and get this thing whipped into shape a little. You might say, how are you going to do pressure on that little notch pad? Yeah, for a minute. I reserve the right to switch. Can you see? I'm just trying to take off some of that square edge, and I've still got cortex up here near the tip. And the balance near the tip isn't great. So if I'm not careful, I'll tell you what, man. The cortex on some of these pebbles is ridiculous. You talk about hard. That little piece of cortex is almost in the balance of my point. I have been known to leave stuff like that before if they're in the balance of my point. When you go to doing pressure work on cortex, bear in mind, and I've said this before, that cortex is squirrely. And the cortex on some of these little citronelle rocks is really, really, really hard and homogeneous. But on a lot of rocks, the cortex is far less that way. And you can incorporate cortex on these rocks into your finished point a lot of the time, but you can't do that with a lot of rocks. But the point that I was making is, you go to messing around with leaving cortex or working cortex or planning on working cortex, you may get a rude surprise sometimes. That's the other thing, is it's slippery. This is skating. It's like creek polished or glacial polished or glacial creek polished or something. I think I'll actually go the other way with that in a minute, but I'm going to do a little more over here. What else did I want to tell y'all? I think of a million things to tell you when I'm not videoing. But it's hard for me to nap and think at the same time, which you may have noticed. I will say that I've noticed lately, of course, this thing will be up for a while, so this will be dated information, but I've noticed lately that Kenley out in West Texas has been making some of his rock available to people, and People have been getting it. That's pretty cool rock. It's a whitish flint, but it's got colors and stuff in it too that are pretty. Little speckles and stuff. There is so much difference between different rocks, y'all, and how it works. You know, somebody, Jack, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, man, but you posted online that you're going to be trying to make Folsoms out of obsidian. That's like about the last rock I'd reach for. But there is some rock that just is like it was born and bred to be long fluted or made into big long blades, tang knives, stuff like that. And some rock just doesn't go for that kind of crap, and you can't make it. It just has to do, and people that haven't worked a whole bunch of different materials don't understand the stuff is so different. And granted, I'm not one to talk because I'll try and do stuff with material that it doesn't have any business trying because it's not going to work and stuff. But at least I know that, and I'm experimenting and having fun with it when I do that. Like I tried to make a Cody type point yesterday, and I did make it, but from a piece of chalky to Clovis jasper that really was not optimal for what I was trying to do at all. And I knew it, but I hadn't tried to make a point like that in a little while, and I just felt like doing it. And that's a rock I had in my hand when I thought of that, so hadn't worked the rock and hadn't made a point like that in a while, so I just put them together. Time is it? 12. You know, my square edge over here is still an issue, so I have to lose even more width because I've got this hump here and that issue, but we've pretty much conquered we haven't really conquered the thickness issue, sort of, and I can put my little trick flaking to work and do a little bit of that, I guess. I've been wanting to build me a really little miniature soul burger to try and flute stuff like this. So far I haven't done it. I always feel bad when I'm snorting on camera, but I gotta tell y'all, you know, I get allergies and everything. It's this time of year, you may not have seen it there yet, but it's mid-March, and you leave a vehicle outside, you wash your vehicle, and about an hour later it's bright yellow. So that's how it is right now. So we're breathing buckets of pollen every day. Alright, so I'm switching to this trickiness, and the goal here is to try not to shoot overshot flakes. So I got to watch the back edge support and not have too much back edge support. But otherwise, well, let's not be dropping things. Hang on a second, I'll show you this in a minute. Let me see if this flake runs. Well, can you see, you know, it's lowering and running. Like I've said, don't be afraid to skip a flake, regrind, adjust your edge, whatever you gotta do. Every flake's different. Kinda hard to get my power into this. Got a little boogered up low area right there, so I think I'll just take a gentle little flake into it, and it did step a little bit. I'm gonna have to try and roll one across from the other side to clean that. I'm still playing the hand I was dealt a little bit with this this preform. I'm thinking about making a fat baby Clovis or something. What do you think? Have you ever heard of anybody making a fat baby Clovis? Let's see if my pad works. See this big ridge? I don't want it. Gotta go. I've got a platform there. It's too high. And so theoretically, normally that would just not climb that hill and everything. So I'm gonna try it in the pad. Can you see how much that undercut and feathered out in the middle? It just completely eliminated the problem right there. I keep mentioning that because one of the reasons I keep mentioning it is because it's counterintuitive. If you haven't done that on leather, then it's counterintuitive, and the first time you see somebody take a rock that's got a deal like that on it, like it's a turtle, and they'll flip it upside down, whereas you were thinking they were going to take the flake on the bottom, like where it's normally would be the place to take it. They flip it up and upside down. You're like, oh, you're messing up. That ain't going to work. And they hit downward on it and perfectly feathered out. And you're like, how'd that happen? Be right back.